Good afternoon and welcome to the Embassy of Spain. I'm Antonio García, political counselor at the Embassy. You're here today in our cultural center, and I think it's very fitting that you're here because sports is really part of our culture. I would say it's part of the Spanish DNA. It is, of course, also an important part of our economy, an important part of our health, and an important part of our ethics, our values. You're going to hear a lot about values today, and I think that's important because that was a message I wanted to project today, that we conceive sports in Spain as a projection of our own values, values like equality, like inclusion. They're going to play a very important part in the discussions today. But of course, sports are also part, I would say, an increasingly important part of our international relations. And today we're going to speak about sports diplomacy and about our bilateral relationship with the United States, in which sports is playing an increasingly important role. You know, when I was a kid, I played basketball. I really enjoyed basketball when I was in elementary and in middle school. And of course, I looked up to the NBA. I cut out, NBA team logos. I had posters in my bedroom. But I think at that time in Spain, not only me, but many of my fellow Spaniards had the feeling that American sports were somehow out of our reach, that it was somehow beyond what we could hope for. Fortunately, that has changed, and it has changed a lot thanks to people and to institutions and companies like yours. So not only do we have all-star players, Spanish players at the NBA that you all know, but also the first Spanish head coach at the NBA. As I was saying, things have changed thanks to you and thanks to the conversation you have with us and among you. And that's really what this conference is about. It's about the conversations we want to facilitate, we want to expand, and also we hope to start new conversations with all of you today, so our countries can have more exchanges and more opportunities still. Exchanges and opportunities, as I was saying, rooted in common values and a shared view of sport that the United States and Spain share. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers today and participants, so I will not keep you much longer, but I just wanted to thank you all for coming out today. Thank you, of course, to our panelists. Thank you to our sponsors who've made this conference possible. And thank you, of course, to our partners in this conference, to Jetr Global. And actually, I would now like to give the floor to our Jetr Global colleagues. But thank you again for coming, and welcome to this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Antonio. We are grateful to be here today at the Cultural Center. It's a beautiful setting, so we want to thank our partners, the Embassy of Spain here. I want to say hello to everyone and thank you all for being here as well. My name is Devin Moss. I am the International Mobility Director at Jetr Global Sports and Entertainment, co-hosting today's conference with the Embassy. So again, grateful to see you all here. I will be emceeing today's event as we dive into the significant and growing role that sports plays in international business, culture, and foreign policy. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce the CEO and founder of Jetr Global Sports and Entertainment, Travis Murphy, who will be giving today's opening remarks. So welcome up, Travis.
All right, you've been welcomed and then welcomed. I'm going to welcome you again. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. As Devin said, my name is Travis Murphy. I'm the CEO of Jetr Global Sports and Entertainment. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here today for our conference on sports diplomacy and the role it plays in foreign policy, culture, and international business. We are honored to be co-hosting this event with the Embassy of Spain, a nation whose achievements in sport and global influence exemplify the power of sports to unite cultures and enrich international relations. The timing of this summit could not be more appropriate on the heels of a widely popular and successful 2024 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games that took place in France. As you all know, the global focus now turns here to the United States, where the coming decade will see us hosting what will become some of the largest sporting events in history in terms of participation, revenue, and viewership. The figures around these events are, frankly, staggering, making the stakes incredibly high for their success. Current estimates for the 2026 FIFA World Cup in the United States, Canada, and Mexico are $21 billion in estimated revenue and more than 6 million attendees, fans seeking to attend 104 matches across 16 host cities in 3 different countries. That's all in the summer of 2026. Less than 2 years after that, we'll have the 2028 Summer Games in Los Angeles, where they're estimating $18 billion in revenue and more than 12 million attendees. The commercial aspects of leagues and events is formidable. Investment in professional sporting entities is now a central component of international business strategies, with nations and private stakeholders alike seeking to expand their influence through these ventures. The intersection of sports, commerce, and diplomacy will be a key theme in our discussions today as we explore how to make these events sustainable, equitable, and impactful. Now, this idea of sports as a tool for diplomacy and bringing people together is not new. An oft-cited example is the so-called Christmas truce between English and German soldiers who were engaged in bloody battles during World War I. On December 25th of 1914, for one day they agreed to lay down their arms and emerge from the trenches to do what? Play a soccer game. There's also the legacy of ping-pong diplomacy that helped pave the way for an expanded dialogue with China in the US in 1971. The American ping-pong team in Japan for the World Table Tennis Championship received a surprise invitation from their Chinese colleagues for an all-expenses-paid visit to the People's Republic. They were the first group of Americans allowed into China since the communist takeover in 1949. In April of '71, the American public followed the daily progress of the visit in newspapers and on television as the Americans played and lost, horribly, exhibition matches with the Chinese. As a result of this opening, government officials were later allowed into China, and President Nixon became the first president to visit the country. In my own career in the Department of State and at the NBA, I've seen countless examples of the ability of sports to change perceptions, change lives, and to bring people together. In one example, while I was in the Foreign Service, I worked for a time in the State Department's Division of Sports Diplomacy, an office that will be represented here today on one of our panels. And it was there one day that I received a call letting me know that NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal wanted to go to Cuba. This was 2015, and the United States had started to thaw its diplomatic relationship with the nation, and Shaq was volunteering his services to be a sports envoy for the United States. When later asked by a reporter during the trip why he wanted to go, he said that President Obama had called him and told him personally that he needed him to go to Cuba, which is absolutely not the case at all. But it's Shaq, so the legend is always better than the truth. But nevertheless, what we saw during those 3 days on the island was the way that Shaq connected with the Cuban people, a population that had largely been isolated from the United States for the past 60 years. He was there because he was an athlete, but that opened a door that allowed him to foster personal connections, to inspire, but most of all, to give people with whom he met a different view than the world they knew. It was such a pure example of how sports, at a fundamental level, can change perceptions and build bridges. Sports diplomacy, harnessed in a comprehensive and responsible way here in the United States, can help bridge many of the divides our country faces abroad and bring the world closer together. I believe this strongly. We are in a position as a country to capitalize on the tremendous opportunities that lie before us, if only we prepare and seize the moment. Over the next decade, tens of millions of visitors will plan trips to the United States to attend these one-time global events as well as a growing landscape of exhibitions and new leagues such as F1 racing, cricket, the #2 sport in the world, as well as rugby, sailing, lacrosse, and apparently even darts. From timely visa processing to manageable entry processes to the country that make traveling to destinations efficient and enjoyable, we need to be thinking as a country about what is needed to make sure that the United States delivers a world-class experience for people around the world. We want it to create that opportunity, we create that for people, but also we want those people to come back. We want return visitors, and also we want to win hosting rights for future global events. Because global sports tourism does not just bring revenue, it also brings with it something just as important: cultural awareness, exchange, and immersion. As we travel and embrace new cultures, including welcoming cultures to our shores, we grow as individuals, curbing divisions and altering perspectives. To that point, we gather here today at a time when the world is navigating an increasingly complex global geopolitical landscape, including here in our own country. Across continents, we see the challenges posed by shifting alliances, economic inequity, and a rising tide of isolationism and neo-nationalism. Therefore, we must find ways to lean into what we share, not just what divides us. Whether you're a fan of Real Madrid or Barcelona, given our host today, or the Commanders or the Ravens, or the Spirit or the Rain, we are witnessing a moment where sports have the opportunity to serve as far more than just a game. In addition to the FIFA World Cup, which we talked about, and the 2028 Summer Games, this decade of global sporting events in the United States also includes the FIFA Club World Cup, which at 32 teams next summer is the size of a normal World Cup, the World University Games in 2029, the Men and Women's Rugby World Cups in 2031 and 2033, and the Winter Games will return to Utah in 2034. We're also bidding on the 2031 FIFA Women's World Cup. This is all in addition to the dozens of international qualifying competitions and world championships, and at the same time while all our domestic leagues are seeking to grow their international footprints. In a time in which traditional diplomatic efforts are becoming increasingly fraught and complex, sports offers an alternative avenue for engagement. Should have muted my phone. When an athlete steps into the world stage at one of these events, they represent more than just themselves or their team. They embody their country's values, its people, and its spirit. They're engaging in a subtle form of diplomacy, one where the values of cooperation, respect, and resilience are on display. And in those moments of triumph or defeat, they create opportunities for dialogue, mutual respect, and collaboration. And sports diplomacy isn't just about the countries at the top of the geopolitical ladder. It's also about using sports as a tool for development and peace in regions where that might otherwise be isolated from international dialogue. We've seen this in initiatives aimed at promoting peaceful resolution in post-conflict zones. When I was a diplomat in Côte d'Ivoire, following a period of deadly post-election violence in 2010, I saw how soccer was effectively used on a regular basis to facilitate conversations with young people around reconciliation. In this way, sports becomes not just a reflection of a nation's resources and its global might, but also a vehicle for fostering that dialogue. Today's discussions are framed by the idea that the future of global sporting events and the internationalization of sports requires careful thought and responsible planning. We must ensure that events not only entertain, but also positively impact communities, create sustainable practices, and serve as a platform for global diplomacy at a time when it is so desperately needed. So over the course of today's events, we'll explore a number of topics in this space. For example, how can we make global sporting events more responsible and efficient? What are the best ways to maximize the commercial potential of these events while maintaining their cultural significance? How can sports be used as a strategic tool for diplomacy and fostering policy and international relationships? What role can the private sector play and NGOs in shaping the future of global sports diplomacy, and how can we harness that influence for the greater good? And perhaps most importantly, how do we leverage sports' growing influence to further diplomacy, inclusivity, and economic development on a global stage. Our panels today bring together an extraordinary range of voices, leaders in international sports, business, and policy, each of whom understands the transformative power of sports in shaping global affairs. Their insights will guide us as we explore not just that future of sports diplomacy, but how it can serve as a force for positive change in an increasingly divided world. Before we begin, I want to express my deep gratitude to our distinguished panelists, to the Embassy of Spain, and to all of you for being part of this important conversation today. We hope to make this very interactive, so we encourage you all to ask questions of our panelists. Your participation and attendance here just reaffirms to us the significance of these issues in our collective efforts to build a more connected, cooperative, and peaceful world, and the responsibility that we all share in shaping the future of sports. I want to make sure to highlight our sponsors today, including the NFL, Netflix, the PGA Tour, Buffalo Wild Wings Foundation, Fundación Real Madrid, Mahou, the Lyle, Riggs, the Jefferson, all here in Washington, D.C. So, I've spent a lot of time on the African continent, both as a diplomat and when I worked with the NBA, and the one quote that always resonates is from former South African President Nelson Mandela. This is probably familiar to a lot of you. This quote is frequently evoked at events around the power of sports, but given that I have the good fortune to welcome you all here, I get to be the one to get credit for using it. So keep this close in mind as we go through the day today. Mandela said, "Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to the youth in a language they understand." This quote does not just resonate today, it booms. Sports transcend the differences that often divide us, whether geographic, political, or cultural. It speaks a universal language of competition, respect, and camaraderie. I hope that we have that spirit here with us today. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to the conversations ahead. So we're going to do a little bit of a shuffle here to bring up our first panel. Just in terms of quick introduction, we're going to start off with a panel focusing on promoting equality and accessibility through sports. This is really a fantastic group that we have assembled today. So we have Christina Unkel, who's the president and general counsel for the Tampa Bay Sun of the USL Super League, Danita Johnson, president of business operations for DC United and MLS, Nicole Preston, president of DC Special Olympics, and Andres Moutinir, the director of camps and clinics for Fundación Real Madrid.